Percussion Axiom TV. I'm your host, Tom Burritt, and we are back today with episode number 93. Today I wanted to start a series of videos, actually, to just look at the programming process in general. I did a post a couple weeks ago at Drum Chatter. I'll link that down below the video. Might be a good thing to check that out before moving forward with this series. I'm going to review some of that information here. But, you know, we've even talked about it here and there over the past year or two about what the purpose of the solo performer is. And since I do quite a bit of solo performing, you know, my job really ultimately is to connect with the audience. And so that's kind of what we've been talking about with those written posts. Kind of exploring what the purpose of the solo performer is. And there's probably a lot of really good ideas that we all have about that. For me, you know, it has to really ultimately do with communication, me communicating something through the music, and then also probably some sort of interaction with the audience. And that's one of my favorite parts of playing in front of an audience, is that sort of hopefully trying to create that sort of interaction between, you know, the performer and the audience, actually trying to destroy that wall, actually, that you find commonly between what's on stage and what's going on in the audience. So that's kind of what we're going to start a series of episodes about. So, you know, we're going to explore the question of what is the purpose of the solo performer. Another way of actually kind of looking at that might be to ask the question of, you know, what is it are we looking for as audience members? You know, what is it that we want? You know, I think, you know, when I go to anything artistic, any concert, movie, museum, you know, I just want to be moved. I want to be somehow changed. And ultimately, for me anyway, the most memorable experiences are the ones that really kind of shake me a little bit to the core. And I think you guys, if you're musicians, and geez, even if you're not musicians, you know, I think you kind of understand what I mean when I say that. So how can we better do that then as solo performers? I think as solo performers we have that great opportunity, perhaps a little bit easier to sort of grab onto an audience than it would be into sort of a larger musical setting, some orchestra or even some chamber music. But as a solo performer, you have that opportunity to really take people somewhere. And so that's kind of the background, I guess the longest axiom ever, if you want to say that, behind the next series. I don't know how many we'll do, but I have some concerts coming up for the Victoria Bach Festival on June 7th, I believe. And then also at the Lee Stevens Seminar in New Jersey the week after. And if you want specific dates and times, you can go to tomsburritt.com and click on dates, I think is what it is. You can see information there. But so one of the purposes of doing this is to sort of, you know, like we've done in the past, sort of prep audience members for the performance. And so if you're attending the Stevens Seminar this year, hopefully you're watching this beforehand. And also any people in Victoria that we can reach with this. I think after this series you'll have hopefully a deeper understanding of what I'll present to you on the 7th and also at the Stevens Seminar. So, you know, experimenting with the programming process sort of has to do with some of the barriers, I think, and some of the difficulties of a traditional process of planning music can present to us. So, you know, I think we've all been to recitals and concerts where, you know, the individual pieces might be performed really well, but we have difficulty latching on to a specific theme of the concert. You know, and I'm not saying traditional methods of programming are no good. That's certainly not what I'm saying. I'm just wondering if there's ways that we can make it a deeper, more profound experience for the audience. So rather than just choosing, you know, this is some of the stuff I covered in my post at Drum Chatter, but, you know, rather than choosing a piece or a series of pieces that don't really have a connection to each other, why not choose pieces that have some sort of connection to each other? So that can be a theme concert, all from the same composer, of course, all from the same time period, or significant works for a given instrument in one concert. Those are all good steps in a really good direction. But what I've tried to do through this series of concerts that I've played and will play here in the future really has centered around a theme, even a more general connection. So that's kind of what we're going to do through this series. Is we're going to get insight to the audience, hopefully, who can, if they can watch all the videos before the concert, hopefully they'll have a much better sense of kind of what's happening, if they so choose. maybe even help walk through sort of my thought process through these videos, kind of how I chose the music, why, what that theme is. We'll get into that. The process on flow, basically this, I'm not even sure what to call it. I haven't named it yet. Others certainly have come up with the idea of kind of what I'm trying to do here, which is, you might hear people talk about a collage concert, which is essentially a full concert of music that sort of flows from one thing to another. And if you look up the word actually collage, what that really, it's not really a term that we associate mostly with the musical art form, but it's this idea of putting almost sometimes opposite styles on top of each other at one time. So imposing, some opposite idea artistically over a simpler idea or something. So that doesn't quite sum up what I'm doing, even though many have tried to use that term to describe a similar program, I suppose. But one of my favorite things about performing music is sort of looking at the more general, we talked about this on the show before, what does it mean to play this Schwantner velocities from the beginning to end, and how can we make that work with 1,000,000 notes in 8 minutes? How can we better interpret the piece from the beginning to the end? And that always requires a more general look at musical form rather than specific information. But this program I've devised, not only am I doing that for each piece, but I'm doing that from the very beginning of the set of pieces. And it's going to be about 30 minutes long of straight continuous playing. And so over that 30-minute span, I'm thinking about how this piece is going to fit into the whole theme as a whole, and the 6 or 7 other pieces. I hope that makes sense. So you can see the hierarchy on that. Not only do we, normally as solo performers, we just do that for a single piece. And what I think I'm really enjoying from this process is applying that idea to a series of pieces over a longer period. So then the third thing I'm going to do is hit some technical concerns. What are we doing here? Connecting it to the thought process of what that looks like. Making something work for 30 minutes straight in a nice arc form. And so talking through each piece a little bit through these series of episodes to say, okay, here's what I'm thinking here, creatively and expression-wise and musically, and here's what I have to do here to kind of make that happen. So anyway, those are my general thoughts. So let's just quickly, before we close out the episode, just talk a little bit about the actual theme behind the program. And, again, the post that I linked below the video there at Drum Chatter, and if you're not watching this on Drum Chatter, go ahead and just go there and search experimenting with the programming process. You'll find my post there. Kind of talks more depth about this, but essentially it's the idea of, you might hear it called the human condition, which is this sort of general idea of, what are we doing here, and dealing with the difficulties of figuring that problem out. And then, so it starts sort of deep and dark and sort of somber, and then kind of starts going through the exploration of, how we as humans sort of struggle with those problems, right? So why are we here? When we go through difficult things, how do we respond? And so it sort of starts in a very dark place and moves into a more a wrestling with, okay, I'm here, I have to do something, and slowly elevates to a point where we're knee deep in dealing with these issues, and maybe even hopeful to some degree in overcoming them. And then so that's sort of the peak in that passion, the expression, the ebullience, the sort of deep emotional outburst of, I can maybe overcome this issue, or just the idea that things are going to be okay in the end. And then it sort of ends in this sort of peaceful place where we're either completely exhausted from the process, from that journey, or we actually have a sense of peace that everything in the end will be fine. And so it sort of has that sort of, you might even say it's liturgical, sort of this idea of sense of inner longing and depression, and sort of dealing with that and coming through, and the hope of salvation maybe towards the end, and a sense of hope towards the end. And so the idea behind these set of pieces that we'll get more into here in the following episodes really has to do with that process of, that elevation of going from this really deep, dark place to ending with hope. So, every piece that I've chosen has chosen to sort of fall in line with that arc, if you will. So that's So yeah, that's the idea I have for these series of episodes, and so so today is just sort of a preamble to everything. I hope to have something up by the end of this week, and then as many as I can pump out between now and the beginning of June. So that's today's episode. The question, look, we always end with a question, is these are some thoughts that I'm kind of dealing with right now and have been working on for a while. I've already actually done this concert at the Round Top Percussion Festival and got some really interesting feedback. I can share more about that in the following episodes. But what do you guys think about this idea, number one? And then two, what are your ideas and what are your thoughts? You know, I really love when you guys leave comments of, you know, either encouragement, which is always great, and sometimes even constructive criticism, which I also appreciate. But what do you guys think? What are you guys doing actually? What, you know, along these ways, you know, maybe a non-traditional way of programming a concert? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. All right, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.